The crowd was loud and 3,000 strong Saturday at Union Terminal. The floor was packed, so was the balcony. Hundreds were in an overflow area.
What a welcome, Cincinnati. Thank you so much.
Romney told the crowd that before making his convention speech last week, he read the remarks President Obama made 4 years ago and said he found promises made but not kept.
One of the promises he made was he was going to create more jobs. And today, 23 million people are out of work or stopped looking for work or underemployed. Let me tell you, if you have a coach that's 0 and 23 million, you say it's time to get a new coach.
The former Massachusetts governor said he and running mate Paul Ryan have a plan to get America working again.
It's going to create about 12 million new jobs in America and about 460,000 jobs right here in Ohio.
Bemoaning the fact that the nation is sharply divided, Romney paid tribute to the late astronaut Neil Armstrong as a man who showed how far a united country can go. Romney spoke for about 15 minutes to the crowd here in the rotunda. Then I had a chance to sit down with him one-on-one and ask him how he'd create those 12 million jobs. What's the first step?
Well, we've actually gone through and modeled the changes that we propose, and there are a whole series of things that create jobs. One relates to energy, as you have a very aggressive energy policy in coal, oil, gas, nuclear, renewables. You get about 3.6 million jobs just from that alone, about 1 million of which come from manufacturing. In addition, our policies with regards to education, trade, opening up new trade for America, cracking down on China when they cheat, at the same time getting us to a balanced budget, making pro-growth policies such as holding down our tax rates, encouraging regulators to support small business, and frankly getting rid of Obamacare. Those things combined lead to about 4% GDP growth per year and about 12 million new jobs.
President Obama captured Ohio and Hamilton County in 2008, and Romney said turning that around means setting out clear goals and making sure that those promises are kept. Tom McKee, 9 News at Union Terminal.
Hello, Cincinnati!
With just 50 days left until the election, President Obama was in full campaign mode on Monday. He told thousands gathered in Eden Park his plan to boost exports and trim outsourcing is key to economic recovery.
In Ohio, if you stand with me, if you choose the path we're talking about, we're going to help big factories and small businesses double their exports, and we'll sell more goods around the world stamped with Made in America, and we'll create 1 million new manufacturing jobs in the next 4 years.
Part 2, says the president, is educating and training workers by cutting college tuition costs in half by 2022.
Cincinnati, I'm asking you to help me recruit 100,000 new math and science teachers in the next 10 years and improve early childhood education.
Boosting U.S. energy development and innovation could lead to energy self-sufficiency and new jobs.
And if you choose this path, we can cut our oil imports in half by 2020. And we can support about 600,000 new jobs in natural gas alone.
Reducing the $16 trillion federal deficit is on the list as well, but the president said it won't involve turning Medicare into a voucher system.
And yes, we've got to reform and strengthen Medicare for the long haul, but we're going to do it by reducing the cost of health care, not by dumping the costs onto seniors. Same thing with Social Security.
Dozens of Gingrich supporters stood shoulder to shoulder at Price Hill Chili Tuesday to hear him say,
I want to run a campaign this fall that's an American campaign, open to every American.
To do that, Gingrich wants a 15% flat tax, a 12.5% corporate tax, and wants the unemployed to take a business-based training program to get benefits.
It is fundamentally wrong to give people 99 weeks of money for doing nothing. Just think about the consequences. In 99 weeks, you can earn an associate degree. I mean, that's how big the difference is.
When I sat down with Gingrich, he said he wants to be known as the paycheck president, not the food stamp president, a term he used for Mr. Obama.
I want to create a springboard so that the poorest people in Cincinnati, the poorest people in Ohio and Kentucky have a genuine chance to get a job, to get a better education, to rise, to go from that basic job to a better job, to someday owning the company and owning the jobs.
Those words were music to the ears of supporters who reached out for Gingrich's autograph or to have their picture taken with him.
He has the experience and the vision to bring us back to what, at least in my mind, was that former, greatness that the United States had.
Our country is in danger, especially for us young kids. We're not going to have a future. So we need someone like him who's going to be able to push for us to have a future.
Tuesday night, Dr. Brad Wenstrup steps up to a podium before supporters as a surprise winner.
You gotta love America, don't you? You gotta love America.
Wednesday afternoon, he sees a full load of podiatry patients at Wellington Orthopedics in Green Township.
I still have to earn a living, and I'm obligated to them. You know, there's a thing called abandonment, and you really don't want to do that.
It's been a whirlwind few months for Wenstrup since he filed for the race in June. He said victory came via a grassroots campaign since he was outspent 2-1.
It wasn't a lot of money, and it wasn't a lot of media's exposure per se, but it was me getting out every night I was somewhere, shaking hands, sitting down with people, letting them get to know me, know my background, what I'm about, and then what they're about.
I asked Wenstrup if he thought Schmidt had become complacent with polling that showed her with a double-digit lead as late as last week.
I don't know if it was complacency or just that people were ready for a change. I think there is a strong anti-incumbent mood in the country. Polls have shown that, and probably that was part of it. And maybe polls made her think she's had it. I don't know. But we kept working until the very last minute.
Schmidt's greeting of President Obama during the State of the Union speech became fodder for a Wenstrup ad. He said he didn't see the actual moment since he was out campaigning.
My telephone and our emails started lighting up, so we knew it was a sensitive issue for people, and people didn't care for it.
Looking ahead, this doctor, businessman, and military veteran plans to focus on what he calls the needs of people in the district.
My message is that I come to Washington with experience, non-political experience, but it pertains to everything that's in politics.
In this election, nothing is more important to Ohio's 11.5 million residents than creating jobs right here in the Buckeye State. And that's been the main focus of the two candidates who want to become Ohio's next U.S. Senator. They include Democratic incumbent Sherrod Brown and Republican State Treasurer Josh Mandel. Brown was born and raised in Mansfield and achieved the rank of Eagle Scout as a young man. He served 7 terms in the U.S. House of Representatives before being elected to the Senate in 2006. Here's how he chose to answer your questions.
I'm the owner of a small manufacturing company. The past 3 years, my profits have been reduced dramatically due to a 100% increase in my health care premiums. If elected, what will you do to help reduce these costs so I can put people back to work?
One thing that you could do in 2014 is join a healthcare exchange. In other words, throw in with a lot of other small businesses. So if you have one employee that gets really sick, and that causes your healthcare costs to skyrocket, you've got a problem. But if you throw into a larger pool, if you will, in these healthcare exchanges with thousands of other small businesses, hundreds of thousands of other small businesses of 10 to 50 to 100 to 500 employees, you can in some sense inoculate yourself.
It appears to voters like me that there's gridlock between Congress and the White House. What would you personally do to break that logjam?
Part of breaking this logjam and stopping this dysfunction is members of the Senate that will look for specific ways to work with both parties to advance a sports metaphor, to advance the ball over the goal line bipartisanly, which is always good for our country.
In my business, we own 12 company vehicles that haul relatively heavy loads. In the last 4 years, our fuel costs have more than doubled. What specifically will you do to help bring this cost down?
To keep energy prices in check, we need competition, and that means everything from clean coal to the natural gas in eastern Ohio to the electric vehicles that the company in Cincinnati is starting to produce, to solar.
With the national debt being out of control, we're spending more than we're taking in. I'm worried for my generation. What I'd like to know is if you're in support of a balanced budget amendment.
Thank you, Ms. Powell, for that question. I've voted for a balanced budget amendment, and we've got to invest in the future. That means Pell Grants, it means freezing interest rates for college students, it means investing in highways and bridges and community colleges like Cincinnati State so that young people have an opportunity. I want them to deal with this debt, but I also want young people to have a job opportunity. And so it's all about economic growth at the same time.
There's been a lot of talk about college affordability and the cost of education, even with some suggestions of cutting that cost in half. Is it even possible to cut the cost of education in half? If so, how are you going to do that?
I think if a politician tells you he's going to cut the cost of UC in half, they're probably not telling you the truth. Frankly, state government has let the students in this state down, whether it's Cincinnati State or the University of Cincinnati or any of the public schools, because the state doesn't help keep tuition in check nearly well enough. I don't think they can cut it in half, but I think they can do better. Second, it's important from the federal level that we keep Stafford loan interest rates at 3.4%. The other thing we need to do, in addition to working with universities and state governments, is to get to take away the middleman in these private bank loans, private student bank loans, where the middleman takes a cut, the bank takes a cut out of it. We should take them out of the equation.
How will you change the system from one that makes it too easy not to work to one that makes it rewarding to work? There are millions of unfilled jobs today. Granted, these are blue-collar jobs, but small business growth is stymied because we can't fill these positions.
I think the partnership between what we can do and what local governments and local businesses do can help us move in that direction. Part of it's training, part of it's just making sure that people that can work are working.
As Congress and the President consider how to deal with the ongoing federal deficit, how will you ensure that the costs associated with the many federal education mandates are accounted for and not passed on to local school districts?
The long-term answer to your question is in state government, a better way of funding schools and helping communities put the effort together on property tax than you need to. But I'm always on the lookout as a member of the Appropriations Committee in the education part that when we do things, that school districts have a way to pay for those things that we say they should do.
That's just a sampling of how Sherrod Brown responded to your questions. There's much more on WCPO.com/Democracy2012. Tom McKee, 9 News in Columbus. Indiana voters are choosing their 50th chief executive this fall with the election of a new governor. That's because incumbent Republican Mitch Daniels is term limited and at the end of the year will become president of Purdue University. There are 2 candidates vying to take his place, Democrat John Gregg and Republican Representative Mike Pence. Gregg is a lifelong Hoosier, bought his first business at age 15, earned a law degree, worked for Fortune 500 firms, and served as Indiana's House Speaker. For 2 years, he was interim president of Vincennes University.
I'd like a yes or no answer. Should the money made by the riverboats in southeastern Indiana stay here in southeastern Indiana?
Marie, the answer to that is yes. The money that it comes in from the river boats, and it currently stays in each one of the communities where river boats are. I think they get the overwhelming piece of it. And then, as you know, it's shared in the case of Lawrenceburg. I know Lawrenceburg was kind enough to start sharing it with other communities nearby.
Right now, our property taxes are not based on our ability to pay. They stay the same whether we have good crop, poor crop, no crop. I would personally like to do away with it, the property tax altogether. What is your view on that?
I think the real problem has become the way the Department of Local Government Finance, DLGF, they've started messing with what they call soil productivity. I'm sure you're familiar with that. I've spent a lot of time with the president of Farm Bureau, Don Vilwalk, who was actually my old 4-H leader, talking about how the DLGF is broken, and if we can get some common sense in there, we can get a handle on this issue as to the way they're using soil productivity, not listening to Purdue, not listening to the farming community, not recognizing the problems that it's causing.
When the new Congress is sworn in January in Washington, there's going to be a new member of the delegation from Kentucky's 4th U.S. Congressional District. Why? Well, because Republican incumbent Jeff Davis left office earlier this year. The boundaries of the 4th have been redrawn, but still includes all or part of 20 counties, stretching from Louisville to northern Kentucky to Ashland. The race to represent the citizens of the 4th is a contest between Democrat Bill Adkins and Republican Thomas Massie. Massey earned engineering degrees from MIT, then founded a company based on his computer-related inventions. He returned to Lewis County in 2002 to raise his family on a farm. 2 years ago, he was elected Lewis County Judge Executive, but left that job to run for Congress.
As a candidate for a major political party in the United States today, please explain how you'd work across the aisle to make college affordable for all students, not just in your home state, but for all students across the nation as a whole. Please speak specifically about student loan interest rates.
In today's economy, we need to make sure that there are jobs for students when they get out of college so that you'll have the resources to pay off those student loans.
We hear so much about the Brent Spence Bridge. I hope you have a magic plan to make something real happen, to really get it off center and get things rolling.
I'm going to be a strong advocate for funding of the Brent Spence Bridge. And really that's what it boils down to. We have to figure out how we're going to pay for the bridge. There are two aspects of funding. There's the state funding, which will come from Kentucky and Ohio. That's up to our governor and our state legislators. And then there's the federal match, which will come from Washington, D.C. And that originates from the 18.4 cent per gallon gasoline tax. I'll be a strong advocate to make sure that our region receives our portion of that gasoline tax when it comes time to pay for the Brent Spence Bridge.
McGee Brown was appointed justice in 2011, the first African American to hold that title. She served as a Franklin County Domestic Relations juvenile judge, helped create a family drug court, then left the bench to form the Center for Child and Family Advocacy at Nationwide Children's Hospital.
There's been a lot of discussion lately about judges legislating from the bench, effectively rewriting the laws that the legislature has previously written. How do you feel about that issue?
Well, Tony, I think that's improper, and I think with the court that we have today, you don't find that. Our role as the third branch of government is to interpret the law and to apply the law and the Ohio Constitution. We should not be writing policy or writing legislation. That is not the job of the judiciary. And I don't think you will see evidence of that in this current court. We are a court that understands our role in a constitutional democracy. It is a moderate role, and it's a role to look at what the legislature has done and to opine on that, but not to create new law or policies.
Ubel is a small business investor with 28 years of experience in technology, medical equipment and publishing, manufacturing, and buffalo ranching.
I have taken a look at the 2013 proposed county budget and noticed a significant increase in spending. In today's tough economic times, how do you plan to pay for that?
Well, the answer to that is I think you look at some of the early estimates of the budget. We've since revised those. The actual appropriations will not be made until the end of December. I've requested that the Office of Management and Budget only submit a balanced budget to us. They've assured me that they will, and I don't think it'll be a problem to have a balanced budget for 2013, and we'll actually require that if I'm going to sign off on it.
We know that there's a drug problem here in Claremont County, especially with meth and heroin. What would you propose to do to provide treatment for these individuals rather than having them incarcerated indefinitely?
Cheryl, that's a good question, and it's one I've been working on since the first day I got in office. Earlier this year, Columbus passed some legislation which allows for alternative sanctioning centers to be put in place versus traditional jail. Alternative sanctioning centers will allow drug addicts and addicts in general to get counseling versus sitting in a jail cell. I think we're within a month away from having such a program in place, which will reduce recidivism, also will reduce the overburdening bed demand in the jail.
A geologist by trade, Murdoch spent 31 years in the private sector, most of it in the energy industry. He currently is Indiana's state treasurer.
In my business, I have to balance the budget. I don't see how the government can keep spending money they don't bring in. So, would you support a balanced budget amendment?
I certainly do support a balanced budget amendment, Mike. In fact, I support a very specific type of balanced budget amendment, one that was presented by Senator Mike Lee of Utah just 2 years ago. In his amendment, not only would he balance the budget, but he would require the federal government to cap its spending at a predetermined level. His amendment actually presented a plan that government would spend no more than 18% of the gross domestic product. Now, maybe it shouldn't be 18%, maybe that's not the right number, but today we're spending almost 25%, and that is way too much.
44 states, including Indiana, have now applied for a waiver to opt out of the federal provisions of the No Child Left Behind law. What ideas do you have on the need to reauthorize this federal education law?
Rob, I believe the federal government is playing far too big a part in local education. I think education should be done at the state level and the local level.
Neil spent 30 years as a deputy sheriff, handling assignments that included the Patrol Academy, Traffic Section, DARE, and the Bomb Squad. He retired as a lieutenant commander to run for sheriff and serves as a substitute teacher in the Three Rivers School District.
We all know that the Justice Center is overcrowded right now and that there's a catch and release program in place to help manage that numbers problem that they're having with the inmates. How do you maintain public safety while you're allowing these criminals back out on the street?
My intention as Sheriff of Hamilton County is to stop the revolving doors. It's my job as the sheriff to hold persons that need to be confined until they see the judge in the morning. If I have to put cots in the gymnasium to hold offenders over to see the judge in the morning to face justice, I will.
Sandy Dean is one of 22 recorder's office workers cataloging deeds, living wills, and mortgages for the public.
I don't think they really see what this office does and understand how much we've cut and what we're working with and how dependable we are and important we are.
The new budget trims another $400,000 from the office, and Dean is clearly worried about her job, her husband, and their daughter.
My husband had been laid off of work for 2 years, and I'm basically the only income. I carry the health insurance. I am pretty much the breadwinner.
Recorder Wayne Coates says his office used to have 41 employees, but now it's down to 22. 4 years ago, the budget was $2.2 million, but next year it will be less than half that amount. Options going forward include closing one weekday per week or laying off more workers.
The third option is don't do anything and let the commissioners figure it out at the end of the year.
Coates says he understands tight budgets, but says there's something wrong with the fiscal picture being painted for his office.
This year, we'll be taking in over $7 million on document fees. That's set by the Ohio Revised Code. And we're only costing the county $1.4 million. So they're making money on us, and they're balancing the budget on us, and they're really on our backs.
Now, for Sandy Dean, who has dedicated 10 years to the recorder's office, it may be hard to concentrate on the task at hand.
It's very stressful. It's to the point where you never know if you're going to have a job when you walk in.
Rust Heating and Cooling is in the shadow of the Brent Spence Bridge, and its trucks use the span daily. President Steve Morrison knows it's way past its prime and needs to be replaced sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I think that the traffic that it carries on a daily basis now is more than it can handle.
However, the governors of Ohio and Kentucky made it clear Wednesday that paying for the project has to include tolls.
The reason why I mentioned tolls today is I don't want that hanging out here and then it hangs out here and hangs out there. It's just not going to get done unless this is a component of it. It just is the way it is.
Morrison said that will be an added expense that he doesn't think he'll be able to pass on to customers.
You got to be competitive on both sides of the river, and just because we're on one side of the river, I don't see how you're going to pass that expense on to the customer.
Governor Kasich and Kentucky Governor Steve Beshear signed a binding agreement for a bi-state team that will coordinate the project and develop pre-financing plans, all without politics.
This is too important for it to be partisan in nature. It's too important to our region, to our states, and to this whole country to let anything stand in the way of getting this job done.
U.S. Transportation Secretary Ray LaHood promised he'll lend whatever support he can.
Both governors will have full partners in the Department of Transportation in Washington, and we will figure out clever and innovative ways to be helpful with the funding. We know how to do these things.
Many bridge replacement details haven't been worked out, but governors of Ohio and Kentucky know this much.
We're going to have to toll. The reason tolls will be on the bridge is to pay for the financing that we do.
Kathleen Machinga, president of Valair Valet Parking in Hebron, wants to know the bottom line.
My customers and I use the bridge every day. If there are going to be tolls, we'd like to know what those tolls are going to be.
Kentucky Governor Steve Beshear has this answer.
There's no way to project that at this point because it depends upon so many things. It depends upon what it'll end up costing us.
The projected cost is $2.5 billion, but experts hope it will be lower so tolls can be eliminated.
Our idea is not to continue to keep them on there. Get the thing built and move on with it.
Tolls aren't set yet on the two new Louisville area bridges connecting Kentucky and Indiana. Nationwide, I'm told that such tolls range from $1 to $15, depending on the type of vehicle or time of day. There's also another question on the minds of people like Newport entrepreneur Bill Cunningham, president of One More Pallet.
I'd be interested in knowing what kind of technology they're going to use to collect the tolls, and how are they going to make everybody pay?
One option is the Easy Pass system, which electronically monitors vehicles to see if they've prepaid the toll. Old-fashioned catch baskets for change aren't likely to be used. Or there might be cameras that take pictures of license plates on vehicles that don't pay the tolls. The bottom line is that this project is on the fast track.
We're going to build the bridge. We're going to get this done.
I think we're just wanting to find the best way and the cheapest way to get the job done.
The initials VRI stand for Valued Relationships Incorporated. The people that work here monitor the home health care for 75,000 people across the country. Some say this is the future of health care.
Thank you for calling the Care Center. This is Brooke speaking. How may I help you?
Brooke Schubert has been with VRI for about a year, helping people electronically monitor their health conditions or seek help if needed.
I don't think of it as just a job. It's coming in to help people. I think of, if it was my grandmother or grandfather.
That's precisely the kind of firm Andy Schoonover and Chris Hendrickson wanted to create when they finished their MBAs at Stanford and left Silicon Valley for Ohio.
It feels like family here. It feels like people who really care about our end users. And I don't know if you can replicate that in many parts of the country.
Ohio Governor John Kasich was there Tuesday as the firm announced 125 new jobs to augment 150 existing positions.
It's a place that allows people to stay at home, get better health care with more convenience. It's lowering our costs and providing better quality for health.
The state offered $367,000 in job creation tax credits with a one-year return on investment.
I think about it like it's my own money. And I am not into corporate welfare or handouts or any of this other stuff, but where we can help and where it's legitimate and where we get the job growth, it's appropriate.
The governor added he thinks firms like VRI add to Ohio's cool factor.
If the governor allows us the opportunity to continue to build companies here that allow people to advance their career, I think that's the key in keeping Ohio cool, or bringing cool people to Ohio and retaining them here.
Cool is just fine with Brooke Schubert as she counsels her clients.
Sometimes they just want someone to talk to or they need help, and it's just a rewarding feeling.
Talk about growth. Company revenues right now are $20 to $30 million a year. Within 5 years, though, it's anticipated that could rise to $100 million. Brendan, Tanya?